how we live and the relationships we maintain and the friendships that we maintain and the closeness can actually have an impact on our physical health.
Can you just give us a framework as to how many hours a week you spend helping other people?
It's about 8 to 10 hours on average.
8 to 10 a week?
It's the golden rule. You're more likely to get help yourself if you're helping other people. Here's the thing. Everybody's going through something. Everybody has some weight on their shoulders. Everybody's doing that. So why do I make myself more available for people? Because I go through shit too. And so if you proactively are that person for somebody else, that creates the opening for them to be that for you too.
Hi, sweet friends. How are you feeling today? I am feeling good for so many reasons. One, the sun just came out in New York City. And two, I have the gift, the pleasure, the honor of interviewing a dear friend, someone who has been generous beyond measure, wise beyond measure for many years now, Mr. Dhru Purohit. Welcome. Hello. How are you feeling?
Thank you, Emily, for having me here. Super appreciate it. Honored to be part of your community. And goes without saying, but I want to say it here just so it's on camera, so it's recorded. I'm a huge fan of you and Ziva.
Oh, I love you. So let's start with a fun fact. When I asked you, this was maybe 2 years ago, and I was just starting the whole process of like, all right, the book's written, now I have to get it out into the world. And you were one of the first people I called to say, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you please help? And you were so wise. And you said to me something that struck me. And you said, you know, I allocate a certain number of hours on my calendar per week just for helping people. Can you just give us a framework as to how many hours a week you spend helping other people and what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about 8 to 10 hours on average. And that
now I in my mind, I was like, it's 2 or 3, but now that you're reminding me, 8 to 10 a week?
Yeah, 8 to 10 hours a week that is just purely reserved time slots to hop on the phone, talk to people. And so why do I do it? I do it for 2 reasons. Number one, I think everybody has to know themselves. Self-awareness is the key to everything. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy? So the first reason I do it is that I enjoy it. I genuinely enjoy connecting with people. I genuinely enjoy meeting people and asking myself, one of the first questions I ask myself when I meet somebody for the first time, or if I haven't connected with them in a while, is what do I know or who do I know that can further this person's goals and dreams? So what do I know or who do I know that can further this person's goals or dreams? And where does the motivation for this come from? People ask me all the time. Well, it's very simple. Being a young kid, my family moved around a lot. My dad climbed up the corporate ladder, and we always ended up in some random city. We went from Nairobi, Kenya, to Nashville, Tennessee, to El Paso, Texas, to Delaware. And even in Delaware, we moved around a couple times. So I have the experience of being the new kid. I have the experience of being the new person in the room who doesn't have friends and who's trying to figure things out. And being in that position, you know how helpful it is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, as a kid, come play with us, come hang out with us. And then as an adult, if anybody here is an entrepreneur or started a creative venture on the side, you know how helpful it is for somebody to reach out and say, hey, I see you're starting something new, or you're exploring a new venture, or you're writing a book. In your example, I've had some experience with that. Let me share. It may not be the right fit for you. I'm not saying this is how you have to do it, but let's just talk. We've all had that experience about being on the other end. And Emily, I'll share with you one thing. Since I've been doing this religiously, and I got started my first business in the year 2001. So it was my freshman year in college. And I started a company in school. What I found is that when I regularly made time for other people, that my own network expanded. And the number of people in my Rolodex that were there to help me out or help a friend of a friend out would magnify with every individual. That doesn't mean that I did it as a means to an end. It just meant that it's the golden rule. You're more likely to get help yourself if you're helping other people. That's why I do it. But fundamentally, first and foremost, I enjoy it. Rather than watching Netflix or doing something else, I'd rather just hop on the phone, hop on Zoom, and talk about business because I enjoy it.
Oh, that's such a one impressive, generous, beautiful thing, but also there's wisdom in that you enjoy it. For an introvert or for someone who loves reading or researching, that might be their own personal hell. And so for them, their gift is maybe go rabbit hole and get really deep knowledge on this one thing and share that with the world. But for you, like, you took something that was an adversity, like moving so much as a child, which I'm sure had an emotional toll on you, and you've turned it into an advantage, not only for you, but for people around you. So I'm glad to know the origin story of your 8 to 10 hours a week of helping people. Bravo. So something that I know that obviously the story illustrates, and something that you've shared with me, is that relationships are really important to you. And when I was sharing, before we started recording, why I wanted to interview you is that I just know that you have a wealth of knowledge to help people both with their physical health, their mental health, and their business health. And then you shared that there's a through line with all of those things, and it is your relationships. So can you just you now explain why you like to invest in your relationships, but how could investing in personal or professional relationships help us physically? Like, that seems like maybe a bit of a non sequitur.
Totally. And I'll start off with this, is that the through line is, the bigger your goals and dreams are, the more that we need strong connections and relationships in every aspect of our life to help us through. And when you have strong relationships and connections, there's a sense that you're not on this crazy world all by yourself, and that there are people that have your back. Even so much of loneliness, which is such a big topic in this day and age. I mean, I've been talking about loneliness for the last 3-4 years. And I had a whole podcast on friendships and loneliness. And when people say, why does this matter? I said, even if you have a lot of friends, feeling lonely is the perceived sense that no matter how many people are in your life, that you don't feel like you have people that understand you and are there for you. So people could have a lot of friends. Loneliness is not just being in some dark corner of the room with the lights off all by yourself, just scrolling social media. There's a ton of people that have friends but don't feel that depth and connection. And what history and studies have shown us is that when we feel that there are soulful friendships and connections that understand us, that help us feel like we're not navigating the world in difficult times by ourselves, we are more resilient in every aspect of our life. And I'll tell you where some of this came from originally, which was very fascinating. So in the world of sociogenomics, there's this term called the Rosetta effect. So
Rosetta, can you just back up? What is sociogenomics?
Yeah.
Because I've never heard that word before today.
Totally. So sociogenomics is the science of how our relationships, our friendships impact our genetic expression. So you guys talk about epigenetics, right? Mm-hmm. So baked within sociogenomics is that our friendships and our relationships also can determine how our genes get expressed, which is part of epigenetics. And the science of that is this world of sociogenomics. So in the 1960s, there was a town, and this is where this term Rosetta effect comes from. In the 1960s, there was a town in Pennsylvania that was primarily made up of Italian immigrants, families from Italy that moved over to Pennsylvania and were working in these industrial towns. And this group of families that moved from Italy, that were all part of the same village over there, ended up in this little town called Rosetta. And in Rosetta, they basically recreated a little Italian village the same way that they used to live over there. So you often found that more than you'd have 3 to 4 generations all living in one household. They recreated a little town square that they were living in. And how this town became well known is that in the 1960s, there was a local doctor who went down, I believe it was to the University of Pennsylvania, and there was a conference, and at a bar, he was grabbing a drink with the researcher, and he was saying, what's crazy? I'm living in this town, and there's nobody in my town under the age of 50 has died from a heart attack. It's only been people above the age of 50. And when the researcher said, that's crazy, there's no way that that's happening, he said, let's study this town together. So they went and they found out that actually this town had half the level of their heart attack rates was half the national average in the US in the 1960s. So they started looking at the town. They said, is it the diet? Is it the water that they're drinking? What is it that's causing this town to be a complete anomaly here in the United States? Well, after many years of research and a ton of grants that funded this research, they found that it wasn't what they were eating. It wasn't the air. It wasn't the water. It was how the town was living. The average male in the town was part of not one, but two social groups. Families were eating together. They were living in the same household, and they were maintaining their traditions. They had brought this way of life that we often equate with the blue zones from Italy and other countries over back to America. And it was the first time really in our history of studies in the US that we started to see that how we live and the relationships we maintain and the friendships that we maintain and the closeness can actually have an impact on our physical health. Now, by the 70s, the town had started not maintaining that same way of life. People were not part of the same social circles or lawn bowling groups that they were part of before. People were getting busier. They were moving to different cities. And that was the first time that the heart attack rate, you've had the first person under the age of 50 pass away from a heart attack. And then by the 1980s, the town just looked like every other town in America, and their levels of heart attacks and other chronic diseases matched what was going on in the rest of America that's there. This effect was so powerful in its impact that they deemed it the Rosetta effect. And it highlighted that how we live and the relationships we maintain actually have such an influence not only on our physical health and our mental health that they could fundamentally change our overall wellness.
Wow, that's so fascinating. It's like we know it to be true. Like there's something that we just inherently know to be true. Like, of course, if I have a community, of course, if I don't feel isolated, of course, if I'm not lonely, that would make me feel better. But to know that it's changing our genetic expression, to know that it could factor into whether or not we have a heart attack feels really eye-opening and powerful. So you're talking about the importance of our relationships, the importance of not feeling alone. And yet probably people are feeling more isolated, more alone than they ever have in their life right now. What do you recommend that people do to feel connected?
Here's the number one question everybody can ask themselves. Do you have one person in your life, at least one person separate from your spouse? You know, it's good to have your spouse too, but we need one person separate from our partner who you can go to and feel like you can be honest about what's going on in your life. In these challenging times, can you be honest about the fact that you lost your job and you're struggling to find a new one? Can you be honest about the fact that you're not sure what direction your business is going to go in? Can you be honest about the fact that you might be feeling more anxiety and feel like you can talk to somebody without a sense of judgment? Emily, I'm always surprised when I go out there and I talk to people and I say, how many people in this audience have one person in their life that they feel they can be completely honest with without the fear of being judged? Not that many hands get raised. I know that my deep and close relationships that I have are not just an opportunity to, shoot the shit and just catch up on life and talk about sports or books that we're reading. They're also an opportunity for sharing and getting stuff off my chest. So if you feel like you're going through a tough time in your life and you don't have those deep connections, I would say take one category of your life and then just imagine who's somebody that you met in the last 3 months, 6 months that you think is an interesting person, and reach out to them and just literally set up a time for you to connect and say, you know what? I was watching a podcast with Emily and Dhru, and I just realized I need to have more deep connection in my life. So I'd love to have more regular and frequent conversations with the people that are there.
And the thing that's coming up as you're sharing this is, how do we really gut check ourselves and make sure that we are that person for other people? Meaning that when people who we love, people who we want to be of service to, when they think of, hey, who can I call to listen, that our name is on that list. Because, I think sometimes my friends will perceive, well, Emily has a baby, or Emily's running the company, or Emily has this book coming out, and they assume that I'm too busy to be that. And that's the last thing I would want for my friends or family to think about me. And so I think that I have to proactively offer that if it's genuine for me.
And here's the best way to do it. You pick up your phone, you send a text message. Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just thought today, I'm here to talk anytime and I'm there for you. Right. And just reminding people that you're there for them is the opening. Hey, I'm reaching, I can't tell you, every Sunday I'll go through my phone and randomly pick a few people that I haven't talked to in a while. And I'll just shoot them a little text message. I'll say, hey, I know we haven't caught up in a while, but I just wanted to remind you that if you ever wanted to chat or you ever had something on your mind, I'm always here to chat. And people, and this is, sometimes it's 2-3 years old. don't send a message to your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, but everybody else is cool.
Yeah.
And I'm always surprised how many people respond, dude, it's so crazy you texted me because I'm actually going through something. And I didn't know they were going through anything. I didn't look at their social media. Even if I am friends with them on social media, I didn't know. Here's the thing. Everybody's going through something. Everybody has some weight on their shoulders. Everybody's doing that. So going back to the first part of the conversation is that why do I make myself more available for people? Because I go through shit too. And so if you proactively are that person for somebody else, that creates the opening for them to be that for you too. So that's how it starts off, is that somebody asked me, well, I don't have that person in my life. How do I find them? Well, go be that person for somebody else. And they don't have to be your best friend. They just have to be somebody that you trust, that you look up to. It doesn't have to be that you spent your years together or friends in college or other stuff. In fact, some of the data and research shows that sometimes lukewarm contacts, people that don't know each other super well, but are still friends and they've connected and had a couple, nice conversations, actually are perfect fit for something like this because they don't bring all the baggage of what they know about each other into the conversation. They could just hear and be there for each other without all that weight.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because if I think about my own life of like people I've been best friends with for, 20, 30 years, they have an idea of who I have been, of who I was. They have an idea of who we are in relation to each other versus newish friends. They don't know who I was. They don't know who I have been. They likely don't have any sort of like competition, or their ego's not invested in who's doing better. It's just like, here's a human. They're going through something. I'm going through something. Let's learn, let's share, let's connect.